Good morning, guys. Oh man, not.
Morning, Rabbi.
All right. You guys hear me? Can you hear?
Yeah.
Okay, just a new place. All right, take two. All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Kuf Gimel. Before we begin today's Daf, I would like to speak out the machloikes between Rashi and Tosfos regarding how broadly do we apply the rule that ain't binyan bekalim. We learned on Daf Kuf Beis Amud Beis in three areas of machloikes between Rav and Shmuel, all coming from what's pshat that you're chayiv for binyan even if it's kol shahin. So the third example that the Gemara gave was ayel shufta b'koifina demara, that if you insert a peg and through that you bring together the handle and the metal part of the hole, that means you made the keli. So Shmuel says it's makabah patish. Rav says that you're chayiv because of blaina. And just before we go on, Tosfos, the big Tosfos, high man, divrei amaschal and daf kuf beis amid beis. Taka brings down the afal guys the kaimelon ain't binyan bekalim. Nevertheless, oy mari gever this is shitas Tosfos. Tahainu dafke ba'achzaras trisin oy b'benoira shel chulias. In other words, if you have some sort of keli that's more or less okay, but it's missing a piece, it's missing a part, and when you put that part together, then you're not chayiv ain't binyan bekalim. But avol binyan gamur, says Tosfos, that means you had nothing. If you don't have the candle inserted in the metal part, nothing is functional as the keli of a hoe, as a mara. And you made it, Tosfos says, you're chayiv because of binyan. Rashi, who holds many times here in Masechta Shabbos, that ein binyan bekalim, period, has a big challenge. We spoke this out b'kitzur. One of the Rishayim's approach will be that taka, this will be the machlekes Rav and Shmuel. The reason why Shmuel will argue with Rav in this case is because Shmuel will hold that ain't binyan bekalim, and Rashi will paskin kishita Shmuel, which is a doichik, because normally we know the rules. Rav or Shmuel, halacha is like Rav by Yisuda. There are a few exceptions. This luchud is not one of the exceptions, but that's a big topic regarding binyan bekalim. It's so negeh halacha lamaisa when it comes to you, for example, getting packages on Shabbos, opening ain't binyan bekalim, ain't sira bekalim. It's connected to that. Closing a box, is that binyan or not? And according to Rashi, if you're going to go with Rashi, that there's never an issue of being in Bekalim, and this will be the challenge on a Shita. Okay, on Daf Kuf Gimel, we're going to move on by learning something that we didn't learn until now, even though we spoke a lot about the Karashim in the Mishkan, because that's really where we got the shiur of a 16 Amar Shosarabim. We're going to learn that they would cover the Karashim in the Mishkan with a thin sheet of gold. And that's going to be, that knowledge is going to help us understand a detail that we learned in the Mishnah, as we will learn today in the Gemara. We're going to have a moedidika leniency, an exception, in where we don't say that since it's psikresha, you're going to be chayiv. In other words, by davar she'ein mischavin, machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda holds davar she'ein mischavin is patur avolosur. The Tanach Rabbi Shimon holds out davar she'ein mischavin is completely mutter. However, moed Abaye v'Rava the Amrit Tarvayu that moed Rabbi Shimon b'psikresha v'lo yomos that you're chayiv. We're going to, and we already learned a psikresha deloy nichalei. We're going to have a very interesting exception to the rule. We're going to move on to the malacha of ksiva. We're going to have the shita of the Tanach of Yehuda. His words are that motzinu shem katan mishem gadol. That if a person intended to write, let's say the word Shimon, we spoke about that case a few times, and you ended up only writing the first two letters of what you intended to write. But the first two letters of Shimon is shin mem. Shin mem, shame, is a word for itself. It has meaning. So the Tanach holds that you're chayiv. Really, we're going to learn in Daf Kuf Gimel Braisa, and where we're going to have 5 opinions of Tanoims regarding the malacha of ksiva. We're going to go into the topic of if a person, instead of writing a mem pesuach, wrote a mem sasum, or vice versa, a mem sasum to a mem suach, is that an act of writing? Really, the question is, when you write a Sefer Torah and you change in the middle of the word, you write a mem sasum. At the end of the word, you write a mem suach. Whether that will be valid or not, that's going to lead us into the sugya of oisius menatzbach. Oisius menatzbach are the 5 oisius in the chav beis oisius of the aleph beis, that their form changes whether you write them in the beginning, in middle of the word, versus the way you write that letter, the form of the letter at the end of the word. If we're going to have time, we're going to discuss the big question that is only explained al pi Kabbalah. Why do Chazal use the expression min natzpach when that goes out of the order? Because the first langa letter, right, the langa chaf is the chaf, and we're going twice, and we're putting the chaf at the end, we're putting the tzaddik before the pei, min natzpach. We'll get to that, the Chasodim, the Gevuras. Let's see how much time we have. And that's going to already lead us into the Sugi and Daf Kuf Daled. Kuf Daled on Shabbos is a very important daf. Every daf is important, but Kuf Daled, we say in the yeshiva, Kuf Daled makes the word code. Code in English, Lahavdo Balaz, a code. And that's the gemara that goes through the meaning of the Chav Beis, Oisius of the Aleph Beis, even though we have from Rabbi Akiva a sefer of the Oisius, some of which we have. Many books nowadays are written even in English, explaining the 22 letters, the meaning of the letters, the meaning of the form of the letters, the meaning of the numbers of the letters, the meaning. There's so many parts to every letter. V'chulei, v'chulei. Let's see how far we get into that sugya. Okay, we left off on the Kuf Gimel Amid Aleph. We're 5 lines from the top of the Amid by the 2 dots, Zajac. Zajac is referring back to the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Beis Amid Beis. The Mishnah writes that Kol ha'osim malacha malachtem miskayemes. Right, now we had the word b'Shabbos, we already spoke out the machlokes, shitas Rashi, shitas Rambam, Zajac. So it says the Gemara, Zajac la'asuya mai, says the Gemara, la'asuye, dechak, kafiza, bekaba, that if a person is going to hollow out a cavity that could contain 3/4 of a kav, but they're hollowing out in a block of wood, that really, had they really used it out fully, they would have been able to carve out an entire kav receptacle. So they're making a keli. They didn't use it out to its maximum. The question is, are you chayer for boina or not? You can argue, since it's not a finished product yet, you can't call it boina. Some people leave it the way it is, and that's the Zajac, and that's the illusion to umelachta miskayemes. No, since some people leave this keli, even though it's only 3/4 used out, you could have made a greater hollow, you could have had a greater receptacle, but it's miskayemes, they might leave it. Some people leave it, so you're going to be chayiv because of boina. Back in the Gemara referring to the Mishnah, that if you strike with a hammer on an anvil. Guys, anvil is that which goes under the keli that you're knocking on. Basically, you put a keli, an anvil is like a globe, a goylem of metal that's flat, and you're working on a keli, so you put it on the anvil. If you just knock the anvil, even though there's no keli on it, so the Mishnah says, Rashbak says, you're chayv d'oraisa. You're chayv d'oraisa, he says, mipnei shehu kimesakin melacha, and the Gemara is asking Micah of it, what are you doing wrong? So we have like, listen to this, you're training your hand to hammer properly. In other words, when you knock on a keli, you have to make sure that you don't bang too hard, you don't bang too soft. You have to get the right amount of koyach. So you're training. So now you're not doing anything. There's no keli there. But since you're being trained how to bang down with the exact right amount of pressure, so if that's the case, if someone is simply observing, I'm observing you perform a malach on Shabbos. Why am I observing? Because I want to go into that fach, I want to go into that profession, and I want to learn how to do it. So I'm not even banging, I'm doing nothing, but I'm learning. Now, if you're banging in the anvil, if there's no keli there, if you're not doing any binyan keli, you're not doing anything. It's the learning part. So why do you even have to bang? If I stop, observe, and learn, am I also going to be chayiv? He's just pointing out the absurdity of that. Now, I mean, you can argue, Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef, there's a difference between you watching and you're learning in your head versus you're training your hand. But still, you're training your hand basically on nothing, but they reject that. Yes, just banging on an anvil, just banging on the anvil is doing something. You know what you're doing? You're making sure that the flat part of the hammer is perfectly flat. See, the anvil is a big block of iron. And if you're banging on a hammer, imagine, and the hammer itself, the area that the hammer touches the keli is not perfectly flat. If there's a little bit of a protrusion, then if you're banging on something delicate, that protrusion will go into the keli. So the way you make sure that the hammer stays flat is by banging it on an anvil. Now, when you use the hammer to knock a nail into the wall, you would not care. But sometimes hammers are used to do something that's very delicate. And indeed, as they say, Shekain, Merade de Tase Mishkan, the ones who pounded the golden sheets that would go on top of the Kedoshim in the Mishkan, when you would pound those sheets, you wanted them to be perfectly flat. They should be more beautiful, more perfect. And Ois and Cain, they would every now and then, they would bang on the anvil without having the golden sheet between the hammer and the anvil. Rashi noch writes the formula. Ois and Cain sagt Rashi, that makin, look in Rashi 4 lines before the end, before the Mishnah, that makin gimel al hartas, they would knock 3 times on the gold, and then ba'achas al asadum, and then one time on the anvil itself. 3-1, 3-1, 3 times on the gold, and then they would make sure that nothing happened to the hammer, so they would knock it on the saddle. Lahachlik hakurnis, shelo yibaka hatashu hudak. Okay, and let's read inside the Gemara. Indeed, Tanya Namihachi, that Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Av Hamake bekurnis al asadan b'shas malacha chayev. And unlike the Mishnah, the Braisa, Kedarke Ba'Kodesh is more elaborate. And indeed, Shekain Merada de Tase Mishkan, indeed, Ois and Cain, when they were making the sheets for that will go on top of the Kedoshim. All right. Get more comfortable here. Amen.
So what about what Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef said?
Rabbi and Yosef hold that since you're not just observing, you're doing a fact, you're doing something that justifies for you to be chayiv. You're doing something. You're banging. Okay, weiter. Says the Mishnah. Ha-chodesh. Again, the seder of the Mishnah has to be explained. We already spoke out to Tosfos in the beginning of Habayna. Going with our theme that we adira b'tachtonim is binyan. That's the kavana. And how do you bring Kedusha down? The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that the criterion which will allow something Gashmi to be a Keli to Kedusha is Bittul. That's the way it works. And maybe that's the next step. So the purpose is to build, And how do we do it? Through bittul. Chodesh. Chodesh is bittul. You're turning over, you're digging in. Anyways, here, al pinigla, hachodesh, plowing. Says the Mishnah, hachodesh kolshu. And by the way, when we learned the Mishnah on Daf Ayin Gimel, we quoted Rashi Befedish that writes that when it comes to Charisha, there is no minimum share. But the Gemara is going to have to work out what exactly in the Beis HaMikdash, for what would they make a minimum Charisha? But there is a purpose for it, and therefore you're going to be chayiv. Hamenakesh is when you are weeding, taking out of the ground that which doesn't belong there. Now, many will learn that really weeding is a tulda of sowing. Because when you take something out, it's not pshat that you're doing something connected to charisha, but you're making the ziriya better. Because something that does not belong there is not being yoinik, is not there. Or, and v'hamekar same, if a person is going to be pruning dry branches off of a tree, again, let's go that it's going to be a tulda of zoireya or of noiteya. Or v'hamezadeh, Rashi says you are pruning not dry branches, but Rashi says sometimes a tree or a bush are producing an abundance of branches. And and all of them are being yoinik from the tree. All of them are deriving nourishment, each one making the other one weak. Sometimes less is more. And the way you fortify that plant is by taking out some of them. And in all of these cases, kol shehu, as we will be learning in the series of Mishnayos, and not every time the Mishnah writes kol shehu does it mean mamish any amount, small amount. Okay, kol shehu chayiv. Next case in the Mishnah, hamalaket eitzim, if you are gathering branches by cutting them. So here we're going to learn, we learned this before, you can do an action, your kavana will determine the av. If you're doing it l'sakein, right, you're being malaket eitzim to be misaken the tree, because again, the tree has too many branches, it cannot support all of those branches, then kol shehu, kol shehein, as we just learned above, then when it comes to noiteya, even if it's a minimum amount of improvement, you're going to be chayiv. If you're being malaket eitzim by cutting the branches off the tree, lehesik, in order to use those woods for firewood, so you don't care about the tree, you're not doing an act to fortify the planting, it's you want the wood itself. Oh, so that we also learned there's a shiur. You have to cut enough wood to cook the egg that's the easiest cooked, which is the base of a tarnagolis, but how much of it we already learned, the amount of a groi geres. Next in, if you're uprooting grasses, here again, if it's l'sakein, in other words, you want to rectify the soil, then kol shehu, because it's connected now to chodesh. Chodesh is kol shehu. But if you're gathering grasses for food, that we also learned above in the Mishnahs. So then we say you have to gather at least kamaloi piagdi. That's koitzer, which is the smallest mouth of an animal. That if that amount of grass is enough to fill one mouthful of a gedi, yes, now you'll be chayiv. But the chayiv will be because of koitzer and not because of chodesh. Your machshava will determine what av are you getting involved in. So Shlem is asking, are you not allowed to give food to an animal? If you own the animal, you're obligated to give food to the animal before you eat yourself, but that doesn't justify you doing chilul Shabbos. That does not justify, just like I am mechuyev to eat on Shabbos, the divrei Kabbalah, covered an oinig Shabbos, but I can't shecht an animal to eat it just because I don't have meat. Okay, says the Gemara, Lamai Chaza, we're going to the first end of the Mishnah, Chodesh Kol Shehu, Lamai Chaza, says the Gemara, Leberza Dekara, for the planting of a pumpkin seed. That's how little of an act of charisha. And the kavasa gabe mishkan shekero lekelach echad shel samanim, that if they would need to only plant one seed because they're missing a little bit of dye, they would do so, right? Even though we already had a concept of einan nius b'makam ashirus, but we had a machlokes about that. Well, since there could have been an act of a minimum charisha, you're chayiv now also. Now, weiter, hamenakesh weeding, v'hamakarsim pruning branches, hamazadeh pruning leaves. If you are plucking out of the ground endives, or if you're pruning reeds, here again the concept of your machshava will determine which av is this going to be a tulda of im lachila. So then it's food, and the shiur by food is generally kigroi geres. Im lebehema kimaloi pliagdi. Im lehesek, you're using it for firewood, even though endives can be eaten, but sometimes people would plug them just to burn them for fuel. So then again, the shear is, so it's koitzer, but koitzer has a shear, it's not kol shein, not kol shehu, kedei lavashel beit zekala. And im liyapos es akarka, which is weiter chodesh, then kol shehu. Asks the Gemara a simple question. I don't understand. I don't care about your kavana. You're telling me your kavana. Okay, that's called davar she'ein mischaven. If I'm doing something without kavana, well, that's the machlokes. And true, it's zicher not chayiv doiraisa if it's not psikresha. And it might even be mutar legamri l'shitas Rab Shimon. But whenever there's a psikresha, then moeder Rab Shimon by psikresha that you're chayiv doiraisa. You're chayiv doiraisa. So I don't understand when you're kavana. You're weeding. And we're saying that, and that makes the ground better. When you empty out the ground gets stronger. And Chadishas Koshu, you should always be high for Chodesh. Your kavana is lahesik. So what? So there has to be two answers. One answer is Rabbi that Anachanami. When are you only going to be chayiv for anything other than Chodesh is ba'agam. If you are reading in a place where you are not bettering the ground, no one is planting over there, it's a swampy ground, there's no difference whether you're taking this in, or leaving it in or taking it out. However, and the lavagam. However, in other words, you die. I just want lahesik. I just want to feed my animals. I don't care about liyapas esakarka. Remember, Shabbos Kuf Gimel. Loi tzrichon the ka'avid ba'ara the chavrei. I am taking it out of my neighbor's backyard. In other words, I, the one who is doing it, I have no benefit. Look inside the last Rashi before the Mishnah. Ba'ara the chavrei lo ichpas le liyapos, not le nich lo ichpas le. Here's a svara. I don't know if you ever heard that svara before. Since it's not on your property, you have zero benefit. We're speaking about a yid that has to grow in Avos Yisrael. But if that's the case, and as of now, he doesn't care that his property, his neighbor's property got better. Listen, if you don't care at all, then we don't say psikresha. Go figure that. Anaya heter. Wait, can we use this? Okay, says the Mishnah. Moving on to the Av of Ksiva. It's one of those malachas that the Mishnah and Ein Gimel, the Rachel Bitchak Tana, the Fedish gave the shiur of two oisias. Says the Mishnah Koisiv, Shtei oisias. Whether you wrote it in the right hand, whether you wrote it in your left hand. The obvious question is, Opa, left hand. Shaloi kedarkoi. The Gemara is going to ask that. You're going to be chayiv. Now let's become familiarized with the words here. Bain. Oh, getting better. Bain mishem echad. Mishem echad means, my friends, single character, the same character. Aleph, aleph. Beis, beis. That's the meaning here of shem echad. You're writing two letters, the same letter. Bain mishtei shemais. Whether you're writing two different letters, so now these two letters already form a word. That's avada. Bain mishtei samaniyos. Whether even if you're using two different types of inks. Even if it is b'chol lashon, one can argue maybe only lashon hakodesh is chashuv. In all of these cases, the Tanach holds your chayiv. However, Amar Rabbi Yosi is arguing, but let's see what he's adding. The leniency of our Tanach is even if these two letters are nonsensical. Aleph, aleph, right? It's base, base. It's not a word, but it has to be a character. Says Rabbi Yosi, it doesn't even have to be a character. It doesn't even have to be a letter. The origin of all of it is that they make markings on the karashim, as we'll speak out. So really, you're not high for ksiva. It's called ksiva, but he calls it rashim. You're high for making a mark. As we mentioned, we had 48 karashim, and and we're saying there was wood and there was gold on it. Once the neighbors got along together because they fit perfectly in each other, it's better to make those two neighbors. And they would make a mark on one and a mark on the other. And they would make a mark, they would lav dafka even write a letter. So it's not about letters, It's about making it a shima, and we'll learn more in the Gemara. Like I mentioned in the Agdama, really we're going to have 5 Tanoim giving it different opinions regarding the Isur of Ksiva, the Av of Ksiva. Amar Rabbi Yehuda clearly doesn't hold that making any 2 Rishimas is going to be Machayev you. Not only that, Rabbi Yehuda here in the Mishnah clearly holds Aleph Aleph Beis Beis, right? It cannot be Shem Echad, especially if it's Shem Echad, especially if it doesn't have a meaning. By the way, there are certain 2 letters together that do have a meaning, right? Like Sheish, right? 6, Shin Shin. But the mashals that Rabbi Yehuda give is not even that. Rabbi Yehuda, no, Matzino, Shem Gadol, Mishem Gadol. He's emphasizing a novelty that we didn't have until now. He's not only looking on what letters they are, but what was your initial kavanah. So if you intended to write a Shem Gadol, and as you begin writing the Shem Gadol, inevitably to write, for example, Shimon, you have to begin by writing a Shin and a Mem. Now you already have a Shem Katan, Mishem Gadol. L'mashal, Rabbi Yehuda gives the example. Shem, Shimon, or Shem from the word Shmuel, the word Noyach from Nachor, right? Don from Daniel, God from Gadiel. In all of these cases, says the Tana, Rabbi Yehuda, his Chiddush is that I'm reading inside Rashi, the Af Daf Shele Nigmar Melachtoi, because She Nischav in Lichtov Teva Gedoyla and V'Kosav only Mixas. But since V'Oisa Mixas have a Tevya have Miskayemes B'Mokaim Acher, since other people might have written that letter, that's why you're chayiv. Now that's huge. There's so many inferences that we will have, and the Gemara is going to beautifully speak it all out. So let's start right away with the Gemara. Okay, Frag the Gemara. Ishleima to tell me that if you write ayomin l'chayiv, mishum the derech ksiva bekach. But if you write 2 oasis with your left hand, ella asmoil amai ha ein derech ksiva bekach. Answers the Gemara. It must be beiter yad shanu. We're speaking about a left-handed person, which really doesn't answer anything, because the left-handed person should only be high for the left hand and not for the right hand. So, heavy, smoil, today came in the kolama, mela, maskim, moider. So the left hand of a left-handed person is like the right hand of a right-handed person. So now I'm back to the question. So then, va'asmoil, only on smoil l'chayiv, and ayamin lo yechayiv. So therefore, answers the Gemara, elam rabaya, the Mishnah must be speaking about b'shoilet, b'shtayadav. It's called an ambidextrous person. Now there are different madregas of ambidextrous people. Some write with equal ease using either hand. That's not the case of the Mishnah, because then it will be pshita. Ambidextrous would mean that even though you could write with your right hand, you know how to write with your left hand. Since you also know how to write a little bit with your left hand, it's enough for us to say that you are chayiv, and we won't say it shaloi kedarkei. Says the Gemara, another answer, Rav Yaakov, the Amoira, who is the Berei, the Bas Yaakov, obviously his father, for some reason is not being mentioned, the son of the daughter of another Yaakov, says that it must be Hamani Rabbi Yosi. No, that it must be Shitas Rabbi Yosi, the Tanakama. The Amar, which is great. Now you have a real nafkamina. What's Rabbi Yosi holds, it's writing is not about writing. Writing is about marking. When would one say shaloi kedarkoi? Shaloi kedarkoi from I'm a right-handed person. If I would write now with my left hand, for me it's shaloi kedarkoi. But if it's not about writing at all, then you don't have the heter of shaloi kedarkoi. Now you see one great nafkamina. Normally when you have a Tana, a Mishnah, and the Tana, the Kama is Stam, and later Rabbeinu HaKadosh quotes Rabbi Yosi, normally that implies that the Tanoim that were quoted until now were not Rabbi Yosi. That's normally the way that we would write a Mishnah. V'hami the Sefer Rabbi Yosi, they shall have Rabbi Yosi. So the Gemara says, well, maybe that's normally the way it works. Not in our Mishnah. That's the answer of Rav Yaakov. That's how much, because he found it unusual for the Mishnah to be speaking about a person that shoyled b'shtayadav. It's something very unusual. You learn a lot of Gemara, you get used to the Seder. It could be that called Rabbi Yosi. Sometimes that's the way Rabbi would put the Mishnah together.
But it says Isius in the Reisha, right? And then he's talking about markings. So how
amazing. I know. I mean, I'm saying the advantage of learning Sinai, even though we don't go so much in deep, but we become more accustomed to these things. In other words, we're learning how to learn. We are accepting, because of the problem of how can it be that you're chayiv with 2 hands, because of his approach of rejecting the Mishnah's din only for the ambidextrous person. It's a big doichik that. This is an acceptable way of learning a Mishnah. Even though, again, we're so unused to that. It mamish doesn't sound like you're making a good point. Not forget about, aside of the Rabbi Yossi issue. HaKoisiv shtei Yossius. Yeah. But that's the pshat that Rabbi Yossi is explaining himself. That why are you chayiv even mishtei yadav beimimim? So why, like shekain Rabbi Yossi oimer, that you're not chayiv really for writing? Rabbi Yossi is like explaining himself. Okay, right. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Matzino, and the case that he gave Matzino shem katan mishem gadol. And the chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda is that you intended to write Shmuel. I'm using the words of Nashi. But since you wrote something that is at teva hamiskayemes b'makim acher, you're chayiv. So says the Gemara, Elon. Rabbi Yehuda apparently only gave many examples. Shem mishimin b'shmuel, noyach from Nachar, Dan from Daniel, Gad from Gadiel. Why there's a reason why he's giving all these examples, and let's infer. Why did he not give one example of you writing a word that is made out of two same letters that is coming from a larger word like titenu? Titenu, the first two letters is taste, to give. And why didn't he give that as an example? Now that has a greater novelty because that here you're writing a word that has the same character twice. But he dafka did not give that. Oh, Ela Rabbi Yehuda only shtei yossius. Vehem shnei shemois. Shnei shemois means here shnei shemois means they're two different characters. Only then are you mechayiv. But if you would write two letters, but they would be shem echad, they would mean if they would be the same character, even if it would fit the case of the Tanach Rabbi Yehuda, l'chora, Rabbi Yehuda basically is loy mechayiv, because why would he not give at least one of such an example? And Rashi here, like 9 or 10 lines before the bottom of the Amid, gives sheish, 6 from the word sheishach, peis from titenu. I think titenu is not or titneim, talangenun. Bottom line is that there are plenty of examples that he could have given, but he did not give it. So and now, what would the reason be behind that? We'll get to that in a moment. But first, before the reason, that's a shita. I got to see Rabbi Yehuda. Now let's start this lengthy brayso. When it says in Parshas Vayikra, in the parsha of Chiyuv Chatos, we're speaking about a person that does something inadvertently, and the pasuk there ends ve'asa. Really, it says ve'asa me'achas me'heina, and he did one from these sins. And you have so many extra diyukim over here. So the Torah could have written the same word without the mem. It could have said ve'asa achas, not me'achas. You did one. But if the Torah would have written the word one, then you mistakenly would have said, if you set out to write a whole name, you'll only be chayv if you did the whole thing. Or we're going to move me'ingen le'ingen, ba'isa ingen. If you thought to weave a garment, we also learned in the Mishnah daf gimel that 2 weavings is considered your chayiv. If I was machavan to weave a whole sweater, and I only did some of it, even though I did more than 2, but maybe achas, that was your intent. When are you chayv chatos? When you finish the whole thing. Or another third example, if you're making a sieve, again, only until you have the whole thing. So the reason why the Torah adds the letter mem, v'asa, me'achas, from one, not all the one, me'achas, some of it you're chayiv, but how little of it? So here on the other side, im me'achas, second to last line, yachalafim only kasav elo isachas, or v'lo ela chut echad, or v'lo yasa ela bais echad b'nafa. You only made one heddle, not both heddles, daf kuf gimel, amid beis. So that's why, again, it doesn't say mem. Me'achas, me'achas. Achas, there has to be one. So make up your mind, what's the balance? Or ketzad, right? The first line in Kuf Gimel Amid Beis, Eino chayiv at sheyichtlev shem katan mishem gadol. You have to write something that is in itself complete. Maybe that was not your intent, but for other people, it's complete. And here again, the Braisa gives an example, Shem from Shimon, or from Shmuel, Noach from Nachar, Dan from Daniel, God from Gadiel. Okay. Now, and Rashi just adds there, the top line, the same thing would be with the beged. It has to be the 2 chutin, v'chule v'chule. Okay. That's the Tanakama. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, right? Same that's our Rabbi Yehuda of the Mishnah. Stam Rabbi Yehuda, just to know, it's Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Lloyd. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, I feel like because of Elosh, no, don't give me examples. Shem from Shimon, Noach from Nachar. All of them, again, have two different characters. Even if you're writing two letters that are Shem Echa, the same character. Keep going, Sheish, from the Rashi gave that pasuk from Sheishu, Teis, Ror means to ooze, Gag is a roof, Chach is a bracelet. All of these can be spelled out with more letters. And the same thing, you intended to write the longer word, but these two in themselves have a meaning. Now here, before we go on and quote the other Tanaim and the Braisa, here's your stira. Rabbi Yehuda here seems to be saying something more chamor than our Mishnah. So what does he hold by? Now let's go back. Amar Rabbi Yosi. Now Rabbi Yosi we also had in the Mishnah. Bachlal, I don't get. I'm even more machmir. Like we learn. And therefore, he's saying all of the examples that the Tana Rabbi Yehuda gave are two characters that are the same, two letters that are the same character, but they have a meaning. So sheish means 6. In other words, mashma that if it would have been, I don't know, bub or other two letters that have no meaning, then Rabbi Yehuda will hold you not chayiv. Of course, you'll be chayiv for any two letters. Doesn't have to have a meaning. Lefikach, he says for Sorat Tzrita Achas. If you forget about a letter, you made a kratz if it was on two beams. One kratz on two boards, because then the boards are separated. You made one act, but on the result, the hanacha, it's 2. Or shtei sritas al neser echad, you're chayiv. And zicher, if you have two letters, even if they don't form a word at all, forget about them not being part of a word. They don't form a word. Aleph, aleph. You're gonna be chayiv. However, Rav Shimon Oimer, when it says va'asa achas yochol achi yichtav es kol hashem, right? He begins the way the Tanach began. O yachi yeroi kol habeged, o yachi yasas kol hanafo. So again, Talmud Oimer the me achas ima achas yochol etil loy kosav elo ois achas. The minimum amount, now, look at his words. Unlike we have the Tanach on top of the Amid, it has to be something. He sounds like he's saying, like Rabbi Yehuda. You have to write from a word. Even though you plan to write more letters, let's go back to Shem from Shimon. But is other people would write just Shin Mem. And again, L'choyri seems to be saying what the Tanakh is saying over here, the top line. And we're going to have to analyze what's his difference. And now we have the final shita here. Rabbi Yosi Oimer. Now, don't forget, guys, Rabbi Yosi already opined when it comes to the melacha, when it comes to the av of ksiva. But Rabbi Yosi is going to analyze the pasuk in Vayikra. V'asa me'achas me'ena. All right? And Adarabba, he's not applying it to ksiva. He's going to apply it in a much broader application. V'asa achas v'asa hena. Break down that pasuk that way. Don't read v'asa achas me'ena. Read v'asa achas v'asa hena. Sometimes you can do many violations and you only chayv one. That you chayv one, you chayv for each one. And again, we're going to break down Rabbi Yosi in a moment. Before we go on, and before we go into what is Rav Shimon adding, the kasha is, the stira is, the implication from our Mishnah is, Rabbi Yehuda's example in our Mishnah is like he gave, like the Tanakh of the Braisa gave an example. Shem from Shimon, Dan from Daniel, two different characters. Rabbi Yehuda and the Braisa is saying, no, even the same. Sheish. Rabbi Yehuda, I feel like because of Elosh Shtei Oisis, you have to write two letters. But even if they are Shem Echad, the one character, you're chayv, it's a stira. And just think about it like kasha. Okay, what do we do? Ha meaning the Mishnah. The Mishnah is his own shita. It's not enough to write sheish. Don't forget, guys, you did not plan to write sheish. We're speaking about you plan to write sheishu or sisu. That's a big thing. So you didn't even write what you planned to write. And it's same character, you're not chayiv. You're only chayiv if it's two different characters. The Braisa is Rabbi Yehuda's quoting the Shita of his teacher. The Rabbi, the Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, the first wide line, and that's how we know it's the Rabbi. Mishum Rabban Gamliel, Afil Lekasav Elabez Yosef Shem Shem Echad, Chayiv Kegoin, Sheish, Teis, Ror, Gag, Chach. Okay. Now, Rab Shimon. Talking about Rab Shimon, Hainu Tanakama. What does Rab Shimon say? Find Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says that who does that sound like? Tell you what that sounds like. It sounds like Rabbi Yehuda in the Braisa. Because if I'm writing the words sisu, shin shin vav, and I wrote shin shin, sheish is a word. Shekayoytze boy miskayemes. And by the way, when the Gemara says Hainu Tanakama, just to get the pshat in the Gemara, Hainu Tanakama here doesn't mean the Tanakama. The Tanakama here is Rab Shimon sounds like Rabbi Yehuda of the Braisa. If it's Kayoytze by Miskayemes, even if it's the same character, you should be Chayiv. The Gemara says, Chiteim, and if you're going to tell me that no, even according to Rabbi Yossi, even according to Rabbi Yehuda and the Braisa, has to be Sheish. Sheish means something. It's taka the same character, but at least it means 6. What about Aleph Aleph? Now Aleph Aleph means nothing. So why would Rab Shimon say you're chayiv if Rab Shimon writes the words shekayoytze by miskayemes? The Gemara is going to explain why. Maybe their machlokes is regarding Aleph Aleph. Now we have a word we're finding in Yeshaya where it says zurcha, I will gird you, and that word begins with an Aleph and an Aleph. So you begin writing that word on Shabbos b'shoigeg. And the Tanakama will take a hold, Tanakama meaning Chevre Rabbi Yehuda of the Braisa. Tanakama saw it, Aleph Aleph Dazur Cholei Mechai, because it doesn't mean anything. And Rab Shimon will hold your Chayiv. He says, Shekayoytze by Miskayemes. You know what that means? Kiven the Isebi Gal Toidei Ba'alma. Listen to this, the way Rashi says, in Lashon HaKodesh, Aleph Aleph means garnished. But when people write kameyas, when people write amulets, and Rashi writes, Uchisavim shel machshafos, when you're writing black magic stuff, I missed that. Veshel shemoy, so you're writing black magic, white magic. There are times that you fill in your amulet with Aleph Aleph, even though it's not a word for itself at all. So that's the pshat in the words of the Tana Rab Shimon. That shekayoytze boy, right? These are his words. That sometimes out there, it's shekayoytze boy miskayemes. So maybe chayiv, maybe that's their machlokes. In other words, the Gemara is going to come to Chais that Rab Shimon, who's coming after the Rabbi Yehuda in the Braisa, is being more machman, even Aleph Aleph, that also can be. Right, 4 lines in the wide lines. Lememra the Rab Shimon lechumra v'hatanya. It says in the Braisa, ha-koidech, if you're drilling, even if you're drilling kol shu yechayev. Now, as we will learn through this Braisa, the chiddush here will always be that even though you set out to drill something through and through, you didn't finish what you set out to do, but your ma'aseh in itself has value, similar to what we're learning here about the letters. That's the meaning of kol shu. Hakoidech kol shu chayev. Hamagared, if you're kratzing, if you're scraping, right? You have a parchment and you want to erase. You wanted to erase all of the letters, but you erased kol shu. Now, kol shu again doesn't mean any minimum amount. It's going to have to be, in my example, at least the place where you can write 2 letters. The meaning of kol shu is you didn't do everything you set out to do. But what you do has inherent value. Some people would erase only that amount. Or, if you're tanning, kol shehu, here clearly, we learned to sugya, what's the minimum amount of ma'abed, the amount of parchment that you need to write a kameya? We're not contradicting that. You decided, I'm going to be ma'abed the ganze behema, a kilometer of a big amount of hide. I only did that amount of a kameya. Or so in all of these cases, the Tanakam of the Braisa holds your archayev. Rab Shimon is the one that says Achi yiktach eskuloi, or Achi yigrer eskuloi, or Achi yaver eskuloi, or Achi yotzin kuloi. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're only chayiv if you did what you set out to do. So if he's so machmir by writing, he's going to hold that you write aleph, you're going to be chayiv. It can't be. Ela faker. Rab Shimon udas lashmeinen. Es Hashem kuloi. That's exactly what he really means. He means, don't tell me he's even arguing, forget about writing the same character. Writing two characters. You're writing done from Daniel, you're not chayiv. Because if you plan to write Daniel, you're only chayiv when you write the whole name.
Wait, Rabbi, are we saying right now that if he changed his mind and he taka wanted Daniel, he'd be chayiv, but or if like what are we talking about? Did he just stop in the middle?
He changed his mind after he wrote. It's too late for him to change his mind. Because while I was writing, I have a mind to write Daniel. And I wrote Daled Nun. Then someone tells him, what are you doing? It's Shabbos. Oh, you go out to Shabbos. Am I chayiv chatas?
Because what resulted there was a word.
So what resulted was a word, but that was not what my kavanah was. That's the question. And how does that fit into the words of Rab Shimon? That's a problem. But now that you quoted me the brayso of drilling and of scraping and of tanning, forget it would sound like Rab Shimon holds you have to do what you set out to do. And that also goes, guys, with the l'shitasi of Rab Shimon that davar she'ein mischaven is spotted. Your kavanah is of tremendous value. Right? Danny told me before that that's the whole Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, the whole primus onyanim. Al pinigla, it's only what you can see. Rab Shimon lived in the words of Nestoris. No, your kavanah is very important. But because Rab Shimon Omer, clearly, when it comes to writing, you don't have to finish out your whole word that you intended to do. So therefore, you have to amend this last quote that we had. No, Rab Shimon is lenient. In other words, Rab Shimon gives more chashivus to your kavanah. If you did not do what you intended to do, you'll be exempt. You intended to write a ganza pasuk. Daniel ish chamudos. You wrote Daled Nun. You're going to be pater. You wrote Daniel, you'll be chayiv. You plan to write Daniel ish chamudos. That's the mei achas. At least one word is finished. You would think, forget, you only be chayiv. So that's the machas. Frek Toisvis. These are such good sugis. The four Toisvis on the top of the Amit. Tritz Vachi. Yochalat sheyichtav kol hapasik. Vim tleme Frek Toisvis. According to the Tanach Rab Shimon, Maishna Riga Mahani. We don't find that when you're weaving a garment, if you intended to weave the answer sweater, that Rab Shimon will be only say Yechai when you finish the whole thing. He doesn't hold that. So when you're doing something chadash, she'eino ba'olam, you're bringing into the world something, a human being's yesh me'ayin. There was nothing and you made something that's already chashav. As long as you did, shtei batinirim. Abel ibud, she'eino yalotikun ha'oir ba'alma, v'chein goyder, v'chein sartsura, and writing letters, interesting. Even writing letters, you're not creating something that wasn't there. Even though you're putting letters on a paper, it's not that much of a chiddush ba'olam. And therefore, your kavanah is more important. Okay, back in the Gemara. Now, Rabbi Yosi in the Braisa. Rabbi Yosi Omer, v'asa achaz, v'asa heina. Don't forget Rabbi Yosi, when it comes to writing, disagrees with everyone. He's the most machmer. I don't even need letters. I can have a kratz, and you'll be chayiv. As long as it's two. But Rabbi Yosi Omer, v'asa achaz, v'asa heina, we're quoting his words. Pamim shata chayiv achaz al kulam. Upamim shechayiv al kol achaz v'achaz. End of quote. Explains the Gemara. And Amad, the Amoira, Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Chanina, explaining my Tana of the Tana Rabbi Yosi. Because the Torah could have written the word Achas, and the Torah writes Me Achas. The Torah could have written the word Heina, and the Torah wrote the words Me Heina, guys, Freilach. So we learn from that, Achas, Sheina, there are times that one is many, and Heina, which is many, is one. Achas, Shimoin, Me Achas, Shein Mi Shimoin. Applying it over here, first halacha, that even when you intended to write the word Shimoin and Me'achas, Me'achas is you didn't even fulfill your kavanah, which is exactly the reason why Rav Shimon holds you are completely exempt. The me'achas, not the way the Tanach Rav Shimon learns, even though you didn't write the whole pasuk. No, even though you didn't write the whole word. Now this is still needed with Rabbi Yossi. Even though Rabbi Yossi doesn't even need for you to write a letter, but when you intended to write a word, still one can argue you didn't write the word. No, that's the me'achas. Hey no, right, goes to avos, and the meheina, if you did some from them, that's the source that you chayv chatas for a tulda. Achashiyena, what would be the case where you do one? You only have to bring one carbon for many violations. That's the doin Shabbos. I'm sorry, that you have to bring many chatois. That is when you knew it's Shabbos and the shigagas malachis, you forgot that you can't do zriya, you can't do charisha, you can't do ksiva, you can't do boina, and then you did all of them. You'll be chayv chatos for each avanav, right? Achas, you were machal one Shabbos, but you bring many karbanos. And heneshi achas is that you taka God forbid violated many avos, but you knew the hilchei Shabbos. You forgot one mistake. That was the beginning of the Klal Gadol. You forgot that today is Shabbos. Shiga Shabbos was doy malachas, and even though you taka violated many avos, you only chayiv one chatas. Okay, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. This is quoting Rabbi Yehuda, which is Rabbi Yehuda Didei. Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, on one hand, is more chomer than Rav Shimon. You don't have to write what you intended to write. It's Hasheni, what you write. Number one, it has to be sensical. And not only does it have to have a meaning, but it has to be two characters. Now here's the problem. A klotz kacha. This is the beginning to sugya. I'm going to ask you something, my friends. When you write, we're saying, why are you chayv l'Rav Shimon? Because matzinu shem katoin mishem gadol. Because other people, they make a word out of the letter shin mem. What does shin mem mean, my friends? It's a name. If you write the word shin mem, how do you spell it? So yeah, shin mem. No. How do you write the mem? It's a mem sasum. It's a shwas mem in Yiddish. It's a end mem in English, whatever you call it. But hold on.
Rabbi, also called a mem safit.
Okay, I'm not going to quote that. And when you're writing shimain, then it's shin mit a open mem. So hold on. So what you wrote is not a standalone word. Umidami, mem the shame sasum, mem of shimain pasuach. Isn't that great? So Amar Rab Chizai Otazoi, perfect. Zoi soy meres. That sasum ba'asoi pasuach kasher. You are a soifer. You're writing stam, Sifrei Torah, mezuzahs, and tefillin, and you interchange either way. Either way, you're good. It's not ma'akev. I know it's getting late, so just let's try to get in as much as we could get in. But as we will see, for sure, that in the earlier years, we're not speaking about the luchais that perhaps no one had the reshus to look at, but in the earliest of Sifrei Torah, many times the langen nuns, the shlos mems, the end letters, and the open letters were interchanged. There happens to be now a pasuk in Nach, lemarbe ha-misra, u'l'shalom ein kates, in Nach, lemarbe is a mem sasum, lamed a closed mem, even now, but that was very common then. Now it's not common at all, other than that one exception. But all of this comes from this halacha. When it says uchsaftam, right, the words that we have in the portion of Shema, and Chazal say uchsaftam is a composite of, it's a compilation of ksivatamam, that the writing has to be perfect. Ksivatamam, and what does that mean? It's gavaldik. Don't interchange aleph and an ayin. Why would you even think you can interchange them? So Rashi writes the first wide line under the Gemara. Yiddishistin, when you're writing, you're just writing the way it sounds. Many Rishonim have a big issue with Rashi. It can't be that just because they sound alike for us Ashkenazim, people would interchange them. So if we have a Rabbi Steinsaltz, if you have an art scroll, you'll see he gives Gavaldik. He shows you that in certain ways of writing the aleph and the ayin, if you can just imagine, maybe the left leg of the aleph won't be fully connected to the vav. If the left bottom yud is not connected to the vav, it's possible for the upper part of the aleph to look like the ayin. In other words, he's trying to say that if you don't connect the lower yud to the vav, and therefore it looks like an ayin, English. And that's one way of learning it. The problem with that explanation is it's only a one-sided explanation. That is how an aleph can look like an ayin. How would an ayin ever look like an aleph? Depends who's scribbling the ayin. Said, anyways, Rashi holds that you would think since they sound alike, you can interchange them. Likewise, you cannot interchange a base and a chaf and a base. Now here it's easy. Here they look alike. Here, the base has a little protrusion on the bottom right. Or gimel tzadik. Again, how does the gimel look like a tzadik? So Rashi writes, I'm reading inside Rashi 2 lines under the gemara. Doimin b'chsivasan. They are, how are they similar? Zelamata would be flipping them not an end at tzadik. If you can look, if you take a gimel and a tzadik and you flip them upside down, they're the same form flipped on their heads. And you would think you can write it upside down. Gimel tzadik gimel. Likewise, dalad reish reish dalad. Again, that's like a base and a chaf. They're very similar. Hey ches ches hey. Vav yud yud vav. Zayin nun. Now, how is Zayin and nun alike? Because alang nun, right? A nun soifis is really a Zayin, just it goes lower. I'm getting over here corrupted. And nun Zayin, tes pay and pay tes. Now, how does the tes and the pay? So again, you have to have a bit of imagination. If you're going to think about how you write a tes, and you're going to take away the left vav, if it's not fully connected, then it might look like ashtikal pei. Or kfufim pshutin. Now, what is kfufim pshutin? So Rashi says we are referring to the letter chaf, the letter pei, and the letter tzadik. They are the ones that when they are at the end of the word, they become long. And when they are in the beginning or middle, they are bent over. Don't interchange them. Pshutin kfufim. Mem samach, samach mem. Endemem is taka like a samach, right? This is a box, this is a circle, but don't confuse them. Susumen, psuchim, psuchim, susumen. What is this? Susumen, psuchim. That's what we are talking about, my friends. Dr. Rashi. Susumen means a mem susuma. Don't mix a mem susuma with a mem sucha. Now, this is something that particularly one may have interchanged them. Just on Al-Pi Hasidus, Al-Pi Kabbalah, Mem, Mayim is the letter of Chachma, and there are two levels in the Chachma of the Torah. There's the Nigla of the Torah, which is open for us, and the hidden Chachma, right? The Torah's Hanistar, and you have to know what that Mem represents, what type of Chachma you're trying to connect to. You're not allowed to do that, this Brisa says. And likewise, Parsha Psucha L'Yasena Stuma, Stuma L'Yasena Psucha, who Machlekes, Rambam, Rabbeinu Tam, the Alter Rebbe brings the three to show him. There's a ganze to do. What's the meaning of a Parsha Psucha, Parsha Susuma? Bekitzer Gomor. We'll learn this more. Megillah, we'll learn this in other places. When you say the Parsha of the week is Amaratzes. It's the Seder of the week. The word Parsha refers, if you look in a Sefer Torah, you're going to have every now and then there's going to be a break. The break will either be a 9-letter break, but on the same line, on one side of the break, you'll have words, letters and words, and then there'll be a 9-letter break. And then on that same line, the Torah will continue recording the word of God. That's called a Parsha Susuma. It's closed from both sides. And a Parsha Psucha is where at least the end, the whole line is open until the end. And the reason why you have these Parshiyos, according to some of the Go'onim, is that when Moshe Rabbeinu was on Sinai, and Hashem was teaching him the Torah, every now and then, Moshe Rabbeinu needed to review. Imagine how much we need to review. And it's not consistent. Sometimes in the Aseres HaDibros, Loi Tirtzach, that's a Parsha Susuma, because whatever that means needed to be reviewed. Whenever there was a moment of pause, of Chazara, that's where you have a new Parsha in the Torah. And then you have a Psucha and Susuma. The Psucha and Susuma, again, is connected to the revealed part of the Torah. As Psucha, anything that is connecting to a deeper Chachma is called closed. And you can't change them. Ksava, Kishira, if you wrote the lines of the Sefer Torah the way you would write a song. Now in the Torah we have two songs. Shiras Hayam, that they are written like bricks. So there's a right column and the left column and the center column. You have to see a picture of this. Then you have Shiras Hazinu, that has two separated columns, but they're not written normally. If you wrote any other part of the Torah like a song, or Shekasev Sashira, like normal, or Shekasev Shalei B'Diyoy, if you didn't write it with black ink, or Shekasev Askaras B'Zav, to give covet to God, God's names you wrote with as a golden dust. You're doing it for covet. In all of the cases, you got to bury them, you got to hide them, kasha. So all we're going to learn, I know it's not good to leave, but the Alter Rebbe also ends up with the kasha, right? In Peri Gimel, Shari Yichud V'Emunah. So the kasha is, how can you say the Rabbi Yehuda, Shem Katan Mishem Gadol, lift the Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah? It has to be a full standalone name. When you write the word shame, you have to write shin shlos mem. And here we're learning that you're not allowed to interchange them. That's where we'll leave off. And God willing, next year we'll start that this is a machlokes tanoim. As God willing, we will continue. It's good stuff, guys.
Excellent.
We're starting, guys. The beginning of, I know Sunday is 6 a.m., but it's so good. This mamash, you can spend a year on it. And there, no one did this yet. I mean, all of the modern Kabbalists, they wrote all these books on letters. I'm speaking about all of them. None of them bring the Gemara that much, which is a pity. I mean, I saw Ishis Rabbi Akiva, but there's many things that don't go, that are not aligned, and to bring them together would be a bestseller. All right.
Gematrias. Gematrias.
Gematrias. Oh, it's good.
Good Shabbos.
Rabbi, what do we not like about Sofit?
Missed that.
What do we not like about the name like Mem Sofit, Nun Sofit?
Mem Sofit, because we are very careful not to pronounce God's holy tongue in the corrupted Zionistic pronunciations. Yaakov, where are you? You're talking about the old Haredi Ashkenazi politics. You with me?
I thought that was it. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay,
Shabbat Shalom.
All right. But you know what? Yaakov, we lost. That's it. It's a done deal. But the guys like me are still fighting it.
Yeah, every school in the town teaches Safit, but whatever.
Nothing we can do. All of the Chassidish should have to speak of it already. All right, guys. Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi.